And we are live for another edition of Keep Calm and Carry. Oh man, oh man, oh man, am I so excited about this edition. I have quite possibly one of my all-time favorite YouTubers on here, and it is all for you guys to enjoy. I've got some questions that we're going to ask him. I've got some Patreon submitted questions that we're going to ask him, and then you guys can also throw in your questions in the chat as well. I've got you guys up and running. So anything going on in the chat room, I will see. You guys are already crushing it as it is right now. If I can't get to all the questions, I do apologize. I will try to keep my best eye on that. So with that being said, naturally at the beginning of my live chats, I've got to do some house cleaning. And yes, Operator Tony, you probably will see me tumble upon Impact March 30th. We'll get into that here in just a second. But tomorrow, I will be guest appearing on This Week in Guns. So if you guys are interested, swing on over to the We Like Shooting page, and they will have a live chat This Week in Guns. I will be on there. I'm super excited to talk about all the major headlines that are going on in the 2A community and all of that jazz. So swing on by and show your support. As I mentioned, March 30th, I will be probably tumbling upon Impact several different times because that is my amateur debut as a kickboxer. I don't know exactly why I'm doing it, but I am doing it. And I think it's actually a really good way to kind of get me out of my comfort zone and push me into really hitting the fitness aspect as hard as I possibly can. So with that being said, that's kind of the reason to the slowdown on some of my videos. Usually I had a video every week. It's been a couple weeks since I've had one out. So do apologize. Bear with me. I've got several videos coming out here pretty soon to include some firearms training. You'll get to see kind of a sneak peek or a dive into my fitness training as well as I'm preparing for this fight. I've got a video on the CZ805 Bren that's coming out. That was a lot of fun. And then we're also going to take a look at the CZ SPL1 Tactical, and we're going to maybe see what we can do to kind of compare and contrast that to the Beretta 92 FS. So I think that would be kind of an interesting look as well. Some of the upcoming events that I will be involved in is we have the NRA annual meeting. I think I have made the decision to go ahead and go with that. May have a special guest coming with me. I'm still trying to figure out whether or not that is going to happen, but more to follow on that. Myself and the AK guy, Brandon Herrera, we are still trying to figure out how to sync up our calendar so I can get out there and build one of his AKs, the AKG 47, or as he said, the FNF 47 is what we'll name it. And then finally, it looks like we're also in the planning stages. It's been kind of kicked around, but there's another fight that I may be involved in, and I need your guys' help with that. So we'll have more information about that one coming up here pretty soon. But naturally, with everything that I'm doing with the channel, I can't do it without you guys, especially my Patreon and Super Chat supporters, you guys who are just, donating the money to the channel to help with, range fees and ammo and gas to the range and all the other stuff. Every penny that I get for Patreon or Super Chat goes into a bank account that gets funneled right back into the channel. And I do super, super duper appreciate that. One of the other ways that you can help the channel is by using the affiliate links with fitandfire.com. That is also a great way to support the channel. So naturally, with that, we need to say thank you and a big shout out to the Patreon group. We'll go into it just no particular order. We've got Andrew, Arturo, Craig, the original Patreon. So thank you so much for being the first. Izzy, I love tacos and it's Taco Tuesday. Thanks, Izzy. James, John, Luke, the Grim Reaper, Puck, 66871, the Semi-Armed Life Podcast, the Real Gun Snob, Tom, I'm Now a Mason Schmidt, and last but never least, Tundra Tactical. Thank you guys so much. I sure do appreciate the support. So without further ado, let's get into this live chat and help me welcome the wait, oh my goodness, what am I doing? I'm getting way too ahead of myself. I need to get over into the chat room to say hi to everybody that's jumped in. Most of them you guys already know. Drew, Izzy, Mario, good to see you. DeGrim Reaper, Operator Tony, who asked if I tumbled upon impact, and I probably will as soon as I get punched in the face. The Milspec Mike, it's the Milspec guy, but you guys get it. Let's see, and that pretty much covers everybody so far. Chris, I see you jumping in there. Andrew Dalton, haven't seen you in a long time. Thanks for joining. And BR549, hee-haw, good to see you. The Mountaineer Marksman, good to see you as well. Shooter 59, thank you so much, guys, for jumping in there. And actually, if you guys have some questions, we will jump on those just as soon as I can. So, again, help me welcome the godfather of good courage, Sootch. How you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Great, Mark. Great to see you, man.
Thank you so much. We talked about it off air, but I do want to say thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight on the live chat. That's awesome. I reached out to you and was hopeful, but didn't know what to expect, and you jumped right on it, and I sure do appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about Sootch. Who is the man himself? What's his background, and just kind of letting us get to know you a little bit better.
Well, actually, Sootch came from my older son, Seth. That was his nickname when he was a kid. So, when I started my YouTube channel, I just named it Sootch. I wasn't planning really on doing anything. And so it just stuck. And, that's part of that. But I just started doing, videos on YouTube just for kicks. I mean, it was, just whatever. And the one thing I noticed was people started, asking questions, and they got really involved. And I really realized that there were a lot of people out there that felt alone. I mean, they felt like that maybe they were a little strange because they were so into firearms and self-defense or survival or whatever. And it really just kind of went from there, just out of helping. And really, that's really what I've tried. I have to remind myself sometimes, that's what I'm doing. That's our call. But, that's what it is. But it's funny because I don't have a military or police background. I do have a big martial arts background, though. And took martial arts since I was a kid. And after I got married, of course, got busy, and then got my kids involved in martial arts. And so, we've done that for years, but then we haven't in the past few years, but that's a big part. So I'm really excited about hearing what you're doing. And, kickboxing is a martial art, and it's great. It's just great.
Yeah. So, we have my daughter in Taekwondo currently, and she's doing absolutely fantastic at it. I was concerned that she was just going to kind of dabble and just kind of get bored, but she's really liking it. So I don't know if your kids took Taekwondo or what. Yeah. Okay.
Shorin-ryu and Go-Getsu.
Oh, okay. All right. Awesome.
The last one we took less, but the Shorin-ryu I've took that for years.
Mm-hmm. So, what kind of martial art is that? I haven't heard that one before.
Okinawan.
Oh, okay. Right on.
So, it's just, and it's part of, just that self-defense kind of, or protective kind of mentality. I've always had it. Always hated bullies, always stood up to them, always protected my friends. Not that I was a lot of trouble. I just didn't like bullies. But
Yep. I was kind of a couple of times. So, anyway, so you mentioned that you have this YouTube channel thing, and you're just doing it for fun, but obviously you've kind of blown up over the years, and you've been doing it for quite some time. 11 years, I think, is what you said off camera. But when did you know? At what point did you realize that, hey, actually, people want to hear what I have to say?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because it just kept growing and growing, and I had no idea that there was any kind of, you could do anything with it except just, I was there just to show my, firearms and talk about survival. And so it just kind of mushroomed from there. And, just it's just one of those things. I think I had 10,000 subscribers before that I even found out that there was any kind of ad money or anything like that. I had no idea. And I think I stumbled across a video where a guy was talking about it. And I went, oh, really? Wow. And I just thought, hey, that'll help me with my ammo, because I was using up all my surplus, all the ammo that I had, my stockpile. I was just using it up to do videos. And so, and I've been full time for probably 7 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's good. Did you, not to get into any specifics about it or anything, but obviously a little over a year ago, I guess maybe almost 2 years ago now, we ran into the ad apocalypse. Was that something that you had to figure out how to change your game plan, or?
It was a nightmare. I mean, honestly, and it's funny because I get this, some people, you're a shield, you're a shield. I never took a penny from any company up until the ad apocalypse, not one penny. I mean, I had companies that said, hey, we want to pay you to do this. I said, nope. And I just took the ad money, and it was pretty good. I mean, by the time you get up to a certain point, it gets to be fairly decent. And then within 1 month, I made about 30%. I went from 100% to 30% of that in 1 month. And if it wasn't for Patreon, which jumped in, they kind of helped out, and that's been a big plus. But so now we do affiliates and we do things. I try to stay away from too much sponsorship, but if I do, I'm very open about it. Because it's just gotten to that point where you have to do what you have to do. But here's the big thing for me is a lot of people contact me, and it's like, hey, I need this firearm, or I need this bug out bag, or I need this knife, or what. And for me to hide anything, just like we were talking about the Taurus earlier, I just can't do it, and it's not who I am. I mean, I've never been that way in the first place. I'm not going to start now.
Yeah,
so,
that's good.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of our audience members really appreciate what we do, is by being transparent as much as we possibly can. Naturally, I'm not going to tell everybody everything that goes on with my channel, but I do want them to understand what my relationships are to the company, and that way that they understand that I'm trying to be as objectionable as possible, I guess.
Well, people are making buying decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And this is life and death a lot of times.
Yes.
I've had a lot of people get in touch with me saying, we talked about a bug out bag. I went out and I put one together. Within 2 weeks, we had a tornado that came through. The house was destroyed. We had to walk 14 miles because trees were down, and the medical kit in there came in handy. We had water. It got us through. I've had, over and over and over people talking about that. Had one guy one time, I had this thing called an intruder defense bag. And it was just one night I was thinking, have a place for a gun, a flashlight, a med kit, just some basics. And he said, I saw your video. He goes, I thought I should do that. He would keep his gun in his safe at night. And so he put his bag together. The next night he had a home invasion. And the two people were armed. He said armed to the teeth. That's what the guy told me. And he said the police have just left, and I ended up defending my family's life. And if it hadn't been for you, and I'm not saying anything about me, but he said if I hadn't listened to what you said, my family could be gone. So you hear that, and then so I'm gonna lie about some gun that's malfunctioning or having problems. There's no way in heck I'll do that. There's just no way. It's just not worth it. And so it's funny, like today, Ben from Classic Firearms, they do a lot of surplus guns, and they do all this stuff. And he got in touch with me. He said, hey, we're doing a giveaway. Can we, part of the package, can we have this guy come down and shoot with you? I said, sure, why not? So he came down, we shot, this guy's from Florida, had a big time, shot a BAR, which was awesome. And that's the only reason I did it. He didn't pay me anything. It was just, I met him down there and we had a big time,
That's awesome. That is really, really awesome.
Living life.
So with that being said, what has been kind of some of your most memorable or the most memorable experience now that you're a famous gun tuber?
Well, what's really funny is when my kids, they have friends that realize who I am, and they're like in awe. It's just funny. And then that's like right now my son has one of his friends that grew up. I mean, I've known him since he was born, and he watches a lot of my Sensible Prepper videos. A lot of kids, teenagers watch those, and he said, "It's just funny to see you right here and then see you on video." He goes, "It's just really weird." I said, "Yeah, I'm just a regular guy. I'm just a regular guy."
Yeah. So it's actually kind of weird for me when people recognize me out on the street or whatever. My first like fan experience was last year at NRAM at the TGC panel, and I'm handing out tickets for the raffle, and some guy walks up and is like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're here. Oh, you're one of my favorites." I'm like,
awesome.
What? I was like, "It's not that serious, guy, but thanks. I appreciate it." I said, yeah, I'll be running around. So if you want to chat, just pull me aside. We'll have a good old time. So that was the first fan experience that I've ever had. And I've just still kind of weird for me. I don't know. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. When you think about it, I mean, just like tonight, and we have guys that are in here just hanging out. I mean, we are getting together and we're promoting freedom. And, it doesn't matter whether you have, what your numbers are. That's not the point. The point is if you're out doing something and working together, I mean, that's just awesome. And so, I think it's funny when guys come up to me and they'll say, "Man, I've only got about 2,000 subscribers." I said, "Dude, you're talking to 2,000 people. Put that in real context." It's just, and it's not just you, it's how we're affecting each other.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And that was one of the things when I first started my channel. I watched a video, and I don't recall the name of it, but basically it was, what to expect as a new YouTuber or whatever. And the point that they made was, it doesn't matter if you have 100 subscribers or 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000. Just put it in this context. If you were in an auditorium and you were talking to 100 people, how would that make you feel? Right? And I was kind of scared the crap out of me. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to think. But anyway, that was something that I really took away from that. We're going to take a break here and head on over to the chat room, because I got a question here that I wanted to pitch to you. It's a longtime supporter of my channel, and I know that he's a big supporter of yours. His name's Keith, and he wanted to get your opinion, if you have one, about the Taurus judge. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I do. I love it.
Really? Oh,
I'll tell you, I've got the governor and the judge, and the judge is in my loft in my workshop where I do all my editing, everything. I've got it on a magnet up above, right there in front of the door. And I mean, it has a special purpose. It's not for everything, and there is a big fun factor with it. But I've had a lot of fun with that handgun, and being able to use the 410 and the 45 Colt. I mean, it's just great. Now, what I love about the governor is I can put 45 ACP in it with the Smith & Wesson. So but as far as I love the judge. I mean, it's just funny to me.
Yeah. And that was kind of my my follow-on question. You kind of beat me to the punch. Is if someone had to make a decision on whether to get the judge or the Smith & Wesson governor, which one would you recommend?
Well, the Smith & Wesson governor is quite a bit more expensive. It does have the 45. It is a Smith & Wesson, but the judge is just solid. I think the judge is all steel. I believe my governor is. I know it's an aluminum frame, alloy frame. So the one thing about the judge is you could really club them with it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Either one would be awesome, but the price difference, and it is Smith, and I definitely trust Smith more than I do the Taurus overall. but is in a revolver, there's not a whole lot that it's in good. It's the timing's good. Everything's tight on it. It's just a great little gun.
Yep. Right on. I've got the Mountaineer Marksman asking about Sensible Prepper. I've got some questions about Sootch's other channel, Sensible Prepper. We'll get into those here in just a little bit. He says that he is one of your Patreon members, and he asked a question. I don't know how appropriate this is, but he's asking, as a Patreon member, is there any way that Ben could hook up your Patreons with a coupon code?
Oh, Ben at Classic Firearms?
Yes, sir.
I can ask him. I think somebody actually, and it may have been you, but somebody had asked me about that a while back. And, so I'll see. They're getting ready to move into a new warehouse. And so he wants me to come out and do a new warehouse tour. Because, I did an original warehouse tour up there just for kicks. I think at first he wanted me to come up, and he had crates of Beretta 92s. They were police trade-ins. And he said, I want you to come up and we'll do a video and I'll give you one to review. And so while I was there, I said, do you mind if I just take the camera and do a warehouse tour of the facility? Because they had crates and crates of all these guns. And he said, well, yeah, whatever, if you want to. And that video has like almost 3 million views on it. I mean, it's a crazy. But I will ask him. I mean, I saw him today. I had dinner with him last night. We ate dinner, had a big time. Great guy. I mean, super great guy. And, but yeah, I'll find out.
All right, cool.
Maybe we'll give me a discount.
Well, we've got a lot of people in the chat room who absolutely love your Wall of Freedom. And Chris, he just jumped in here and said, watching Sootch, inspired me to build my very first AR. I just finished my 308 AR build as well. So
awesome. I love it. That is one big thing for me, is I think if you're going to have an AR-15, building an AR-15 is just you really need to. It helps you to understand the firearm. And if I've inspired anybody, that is one thing I love to hear. So thank you. Of course, I had to remove all those videos from YouTube. But they are on our website at sootchgear.com, and I have all the links to Get Zone and I think Full 32. So if you ever need something, you can go there and click on it and watch it.
Awesome. That's actually some really great information. So moving on with our questions that I have lined up for you. And this one comes from one of my Patreon members. Good old Drew, man. He's always ready for some type of off the wall question. But he says that he's noticed that you've stopped smoking cigars, or at least having a cigar, at the end of one of your videos. And he wanted to know why. And if you drink scotch, what's your favorite scotch?
Well, as far as cigars go, I did smoke cigars for a long time, and just for kicks, and then just kind of made it funny on the video. And but then my wife joined up with my kids and gave me such a hard time, because every time I'd come in, it was like, you've been smoking. And so I kind of laid off. I still smoke them on occasion. In fact, Hickok and I are going to smoke one at NRA. That's one big thing we like to do when we're there. But so now I do chew them. I like the Partagas Black Labels. And so when I'm at the range, I'll have a cigar that I'm just kind of, chewing on a little bit. No big deal. But I do smoke them on occasion. And the Partagas Black Labels are my favorite. As far as scotch, no. I'm not a big scotch drinker. I do drink a beer occasionally, and I do like Moscow Mules.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. How I could go for one right now. My goodness. Whew. Anyway, yeah, I got turned on to vodka just here a few years ago. My former boss, he's a huge Kettle One fan. He loves Kettle One vodka, and got me drinking vodka and Sprite or 7-Up, and then got me into the Moscow Mules as well. So that was, oh man, a nice with a nice really cold tankard, and it's a hot day. So refreshing.
Nothing better.
Yeah. And I had one. We've actually here in town, oddly enough, we have a speakeasy here in town. You actually have to either be a member or you have to know the code word to get into the speakeasy. And let me tell you, they made a Moscow Mule and it was shaken, not stirred, you know, the whole bond thing. And there's an actual difference. I didn't know that there's a difference between shaken and stirred. And there is. So I don't know.
I'll have to try it.
You should. Next time you get one, you can do the whole James Bond thing. I don't know.
I'm a PPK handy.
So we have to say goodnight to Izzy. Hard tacos are the best long. Thanks for joining. I sure do appreciate it. It's always good to see you. We've got some new additions. The Real Gun Snob, same guy. He's in there. Thanks for joining. And Black Diamond Guns and Gear. Josh and Josh, good to see you guys. Thanks for swinging in by. We just kind of talked about the whole milsurp and kind of danced around that subject a little bit. But what are your thoughts on milsurp rifles, historic rifles, and stuff like that? Personally, for me, I think they're super cool, but I don't purchase them. But I can see there's a couple that may fall into that category in your wall. What do you think?
No, I'm a big fan. And have for a number of years. But this is the secret to milsurp, is when they come into the country, you know, they're coming in by the thousands. And so and the prices are really cheap. I remember when I used to buy Mosin Nagants for like $59 a piece. Or even SKSs at one point were $59 a piece. And, you know, a lot of people would look at them and say, well, that's just cheap. But that's because there are just loads of them coming in. So when they first come in, it's the time to buy it. And then they will go up. They will go up. So, and you know, some of the milsurp kind of stuff is kind of tanked, you know, it's kind of slowed down. So, you know, in fact, I went and bought a M1 carbine. I'd given one to my dad. When he was in the Army, he had one. And I went and bought another one, and it was $800. But the one that I bought originally was $250.
Wow.
Came out of Israel. So, you know, the thing is, of course, milsurp, you got to be careful. You know, you want to make sure possibly, you know, it needs to be head spaced. But really overall, I've had a lot of good experience with them. A lot of them are police trade-ins or, you know, government trade-ins, and they've been maintained, arsenal refinished a lot of times, and they're just great guns.
That's kind of my thoughts as well. You know, the 1911s are now starting to be offered by the CMP, and that's something that I was really interested in jumping on. But man, part of me is like, yeah, I'd really like to get one of these classic, you know, milsurp 1911s. But the other half is like, man, spending $800 on a pistol that you're not going to be able to see before you get it, kind of. I don't know. If given the chance with the CMP, you know, civilian marksmanship program, would that be something that you would be interested in, or are you still kind of cautious? Yeah. Okay.
No, yeah. If it's, you know, especially without import marks, that's the big thing about the CMP, because those are typically they're U.S. military property, and then they're turned over to civilians. So, you know, you're not going to have the import marks, which is going to bring the value way up. And over time, especially. Yeah. So, but you know, you got to decide: do you want to spend $800 as a chunk? Mm-hmm. You know. Yeah. So, and you're right. You may come across one that's, you know, just worn out.
Indeed, and you know, Andrew jumping in the chat room says that he saw Mosins this last weekend at the gun show that we just so happened to both be at for $350 plus. Yeah. It's just mind-boggling, because I can remember in circa 2009, 2010, there was a gun store when I was stationed at Fort Campbell that you could walk in and there would always be a crate right by the front door, and you just walk over, pick one up, and walk to the counter. $100, it's all yours.
Right.
It just blew my mind. You know, I never jumped on it because I'm like, meh, you know, they'll always be around. But now they're ridiculously priced.
It doesn't matter what it is. You know, you look at that's like those old Nagant revolvers. I would see those for, you know, $59 a piece. And I thought something was wrong with them. I was like, well, that looks like junk, you know, and it does. They look kind of funky, you know. And in the ammo, I thought, well, I don't know if I can get ammo. But I ended up buying one. and ammo at first was kind of difficult to get. Now those guns, they've skyrocketed. I mean, I've seen them for $600.
It's just, I mean, I don't want to say it's ridiculous. I think it's just the nature of the market, but you know, it is what it is, I guess. So, and so we had talked about Classic Firearms. They're a big, they're a website that does a lot of milsurp type of stuff. And you did an unboxing video. Tell us what that was like to unbox or open this crate of these weapons that had been probably hadn't seen the light of day for decades.
Well, it was the one particular was the Beretta 92s, and it was the S model, I believe. And so they had 15 crates, and they had 200 pistols just lined up. And when I opened the crate up, the one, because he let me pick which one I wanted, but they were all in like mint condition. I mean, mine looks almost brand new. And so, yeah, it was kind of a breathtaking experience, to say the least. You know, you just open it up, and you're like, whoa. Well, and it was funny because that's what we continue to do. We walk through the warehouse. I would open up crates or look through places and pull all this, you know, these different pistols, CZ, you know, different old CZs and Polish 64s and, you know, just all kind of stuff. He did have some Lee Enfield 303s.
Wow.
Those things, you know, but those are already pretty dried up. They just had a few of them. And so, you know, it's really cool to just see history like that. You're just opening it up. I mean, for me, you know, I see new guns constantly. You know, it's polymer, striker fire, you know, and so when the old surplus stuff to me has a lot of soul and a little bit of character to it that we're not seeing. But, you know, if I'm going to depend my life on it, though, I want that boring striker fire polymer frame pistol, you know.
Yeah, indeed. A question coming in from the chat room. Actually, it's pretty funny. Over at Classic Firearms, was their warehouse floor covered in cosmoline?
No, it wasn't too bad, but it was, you know, they would just get shipments in, so it was kind of, you know, crazy looking. You know, what's funny is he told me he just got a bunch of SKSs in. They haven't gotten them yet. They're Chinese SKSs. Maybe I should be telling it, but they're getting a bunch in, and it made me think about it because they are totally covered in cosmoline. I mean, they are packed in it, and so they've had a time getting them cleaned up. So that's going to be a big one when those come out. That's going to be a big deal. So yeah.
We got a local YouTuber to me. He's from the Kansas City area. His name's Milsurp Mike, and he does all his videos are about Milsurp. He actually just gave away a SKS here. Oh man, maybe about 2 months ago or so. And before he gave it away, he went ahead and test fired it, and it actually burst fired because of all the cosmoline jamming up the trigger assembly.
Yeah, in fact, they have a floating firing pin, and if they get stuck or anything, they can definitely have some problems.
Yeah, very much so. So from the chat room, Richard Oliver jumping in saying hi and what's up to Sootch and myself. Good to see you. And Sheck, he says that he's cleaning his G43X while watching. What fun, indeed. You've had a chance to get your hands on the new Glocks, those 43, the 43X. Yeah, there it is. And have you handled the 48 as well? Of course, naturally.
You know, it's funny. Glock sent these, and sometimes people have been like, "Oh, he's a shield for Glock." I have to buy these, which I did. I bought these, you know, and they don't give you that much of a discount, by the way. But I was able to get them early. You know, well, I'll tell you what's funny is so many people are going with the G48 rather than the G43X. And when I first got I got them in at the same time. I thought, what's the deal with the G48? I thought, okay, it's a 10-round slim Model 19. And I hadn't thought it through. But once you put it in your hand, it feels like a 1911. It's so thin. And in fact, I think Hickok made a video just recently talking about that. He said, I don't even want the G43X. I want the G48. He goes, I love it. And in fact, Skinny Medic, who's a YouTuber, does a lot of medical stuff. He just bought the 48. My buddy Robbie Wheaton got the 48. My buddy NC Hill, which comes to a lot of the events with us, he calls himself Sootch Security, but he bought the 48. And it's funny. I would really like to hear maybe some. Of course, Glock won't disclose it, but I'm just curious at the sales ratios between the two.
That would be very interesting as well. I didn't quite understand the real reason between the two as well until I started sitting back and realizing that the 48 does offer a longer sight radius, which theoretically would be more accurate, possibly. I don't know.
I think one of the biggest things about the 48 or the 43. Wait, I'm gonna get them all confused. The 48. Here I go again. Okay, yeah, 48. Let me get this straight. I got them waddling around here. Is that for concealed carry? It's the grip that really counts. And so with the 43X, the grip's the same. So really, this is just as easy to conceal as the G43X. Now, for me, if I'm an appendix carry, I like it to be a little bit shorter. It just makes it more comfortable. But for carrying any other way, you're not really sacrificing anything with going with the longer slide.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the big attractions of the G48.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that there's been a lot of positive remarks about the G43X and the G48, but I was also taken by the Warrior Poet and his perspective on it, and I understand his point. Everybody has their own thoughts on what they like to carry and the reasons why they carry a G43 instead of a 43X or a 48. And yeah, it was good. He actually made some pretty decent points as well.
Yeah, John's a smart guy. He knows his stuff.
He's seen a couple things.
Yeah,
in his time.
Definitely.
So go ahead.
Well, the one thing about all of these is there have been times where I've carried certain things for a while, and then I'll switch out and do something different. And my mind changes. It may be just the way I feel more comfortable carrying it. One big thing for me has always been I carry a Glock 26 Gen 5. I mean, and really, I had a Gen 3 before that. I've carried it for 10 years, pretty much about 90% of my concealed carry. And I feel very comfortable with it. I ride it kidney carry. And but I really never liked it in the appendix style. Just didn't like it. Was just a little bit too thick. I just didn't care for it. But then I started carrying different pistols, appendix, and started carrying the G26 appendix. And, I think as we progress, sometimes it's just certain places we are in our life. We change our mind. Things go differently. So, for someone to come up and say, well, this is the pistol and what you're carrying doesn't make any sense, I think that can be. Now, there are times where that's true, but I think a lot of times, everybody's different. We're all different.
Yep, indeed. And I got a question, and this kind of veers us off topic, but I'm a Glock guy. I carry a Glock 19 most days. If I'm not carrying a Glock 19 because I'm like in my workout clothes, that I'm carrying the P365. I get a lot of trash talked to me about carrying the 365, but it's run flawlessly for me. And one of the comments from the chat room here is asking if Fit and Fire has grown to love the Taurus G2C, and I knew there was going to be at least one question about it. So I also know that the mil-spec guy also wanted to know if I could clarify my position on the G2C. I will say this: I am pleasantly surprised at the G2C. Sootch and I were talking about this prior to going live, and I do realize that Taurus has a track record that a lot of people haven't liked. I've got a lot of comments in all 4 of my videos that people are just like, Taurus is crap. But I gotta say, the G2C is very surprising to me. So much so So much so that I have a very dear friend of mine who doesn't have a lot of money and wants to know what type of pistol that they should buy. And I said, I've got just the pistol for you. I will sell you my G2C because I feel that it is reliable enough and inexpensive enough for you. So I hope that it's really going to change my mind and change my bias on Taurus with what they're doing. So there you have it, chat room. That's my position on it. Anyway, okay. So before we take another break to the chat room, what has been your favorite genre of weapon? I mean, are you more of a pistol guy? You're more a rifle, shotgun, and in that genre, what has been your most beloved of those?
Well, if I could only have one gun, it would be the Glock 19. Now, the reason for that is I definitely, especially being a survival-minded person, a prepper, a rifle is, you only have a pistol to get to your rifle. But one of the things about a handgun, and the Glock 19 in particular, is that I can conceal it. If I'm, doing something, if I'm, whatever it is, if I need to defend my home, if I need to defend myself out and about, I can't carry an AR-15 or an AK. I can carry a pistol. Now, the one thing that my whole mindset, though, has always been is functionality as far as my self-defense. So a pistol is part of it, a rifle and a shotgun. Those are very important elements. And so everything else is, as long as it's accurate, it's reliable, and it's fairly ergonomic. Because it could be ergonomic for one guy, it's not ergonomic for me, or whatever. There's a lot of different aspects. For years, when I was shooting Glocks originally, because I've been shooting them since they came out, pretty much. A buddy of mine had a Beretta 92. I hated it. It was thick, it was big, it just felt clunky. Now, over the past few years, and it's been a number of years now, I love the Beretta 92. Love it. I was a gun guy then. I'm still a gun guy now, but my taste and my ideas have changed. So for me, the big thing is it's not necessarily the gun itself. It's the purpose behind it. Now, I love guns. I mean, I have a gun. I'm a little bit, have a gun.
You got a couple behind there.
Yeah. And, but really when it comes down to it, it's a tool when you're really getting practical. And so, it's one of those things. Now, for me, the Glock 19, even though I do carry 26, I do carry the 19 quite often. But now I love the AK-47, and I've got a number of them. But the AR-15 is my kind of go-to rifle. But I could pick up an AK just the same. I think there's just a lot of appeal with the AR for me for a lot of different reasons. And then with the shotgun, it's funny, but Remington 870, and I'm talking about old school Remington before, Freedom Group and all that. I've got a Remington 870, man, that I would defend my life with. I mean, it's just solid. So I try not to get too far into now, and that's one thing, just like with the G2C. There's a lot of guys out there that own G2Cs, and I own one. And I was honestly shocked at how well it did for us. And I was not looking for it to be all that good. And I was actually a little bit impressed, and maybe that's part of it. But there's a lot of people that own G2C. So for me personally, especially with my channel, is to get out and just bash it. There's a lot of guys that own them, and they're happy with them and they love them. So, that's one thing that kind of tempers sometimes what I might say about something, because sometimes it's just personal preference. So, but again, as long as it has a decent track record, like the SIG P365, mine's been spot on. I put over 1,000 rounds through it, hadn't had a bit of trouble. We all know that Tim from Military Arms Channel has had a slew of problems, but here's the key. My friend Robbie Wheaton, who is a gunsmith for the past 20 years, told me, he goes, there are definitely some issues with some of them. And, SIG needs to do some things to fix it. But there's a lot of guys. I think Hickok was talking about it the other day. He said his is ran flawless. He loves it.
Yep.
But sometimes though, for me, when things do have a problem, it undermines my confidence. Pistol may run great, but that's like the Remington R51. I mean, what a disaster. But then I got one because I think it was gunbuyer.com said, hey, would you be willing to do it? And I really didn't want to. But, they had the new model. I got it. Thing ran like a top. I had one malfunction with 600 rounds. I've put 400 rounds through it after that and have not had any malfunctions.
Wow.
But I can see guys having problems. But the Gen 2, I think the magazines are the problem. But so what I'm getting to is really for me, if find something dependable, find something, that has a good track record if you're really going to depend on it long term. And, we also need to step back and think of it as a tool, the tool it really is.
And you make a really good point, and the fact of you have a pistol to fight for your rifle or your shotgun. I think that's a really good point. I would really hope that a lot of people who are fans of guns, who collect guns, who carry guns on a daily basis, I think that one of the aspects of fighting your way to a rifle is ensuring that you have good training as well. So yeah. So let's take a break real quick. I got a question from Johnny in the chat room. He has an interesting question here because it's kind of controversial depending on who you talk to. And he's asking, what is your take on the very mixed views on the dangers of appendix carry?
Well, I think one of the big problems with appendix carry is that if you have a striker fire pistol and you're tucking it away in a holster and it gets caught on a shirt, that's definitely a problem. It can set it off. And of course, that's probably one of the last places on earth that I want to have an accidental discharge or a negligent discharge. To me, that's one of the things that bothers me. So, really carrying a striker fire pistol without a safety is playing a little bit of Russian roulette, unless, you just need to be very careful. But a lot of times there are situations where you may not be as careful as you should. So that's the one concern, even though I do carry appendix carry with a striker fire pistol. But I think one of the other key parts of that is having a really solid holster that fits well with the gun. It goes in. You have your shirt guard, so you get that out of the way. But just be cognizant that could happen. So that's just one of my things. Now I'll tell you something funny, and I'm carrying appendix right now. And a lot of people are going to freak about this, but I have one of the Kimber Solos, and I did a full review. I think it's actually on GetZone, but I did a reliability test with this thing. And I've shot every kind of round that goes through this and have had no malfunctions with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to hear half the people say that Kimbers suck, the other half say Kimbers are great. I've actually never even seen that particular model. So,
well, this is the thing that I was really wanting to point out is that it has a safety. It has a frame safety. I'm not big on frame safeties, but if I'm going to carry it, appendix, it does give you a little peace of mind.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But, I think I'm not going to tell people they shouldn't carry appendix style if it's a striker fire, but you just need to really be careful. Make sure that you have a really good way to reholster your gun, holster your gun. I mean, for me, I always holster it with the gun in the holster, place it in the belt, and then, drawing it. I mean, anything can happen. So you don't want to be just completely, some people get way out of frame. And, but safety is a major thing. But, here's the other part of it. How many people do you hear being, that's happening to?
I mean, it does happen. I know there was a viral video that went through a whole bunch of different people's feeds. Man, I want to say maybe last summer, guy was tucking in his G43, I think. It was a shield into his holster appendix. He was at a gun shop and he like bends over and shoots himself, and he just pulls it out and throws it on the ground.
I saw that video.
Yeah. So no one has any idea how that happened. I don't have any follow up on that. But one thing that I will say is my Glock 19, which was at that time my primary, I was carrying it 100% of the time. It had a Zev spring kit put into it, and I immediately changed that out. I mean, just that quick. I went right back to the stock spring and made sure that that was one less thing that I had to worry about.
Right.
So, someone else wanted to jump in here real quick and ask, would you feel more comfortable appendix carry with a striker fire weapon that had a manual safety as well?
Yes. Yes. And I think that's, I mean, again, I am not a fan typically, but because of appendix carry, it just gives you a little peace of mind. The big thing is to train with it. Make sure that you know how to disengage that safety, when you're bringing it out of your holster.
Very much so. Yeah. And if you do take any courses, I would look for like defensive pistol courses that encourage you to go through the course, how you carry on a daily basis as well.
Definitely.
Yep. So, all right. So there's our break. Let's get back into the pre-scripted questions and getting back to the Mountain Man Marksman's question. You have a second channel. It is called the Sensible Prepper. What got you kind of involved into the prepping scene? Tell us a little bit about that channel, and what are some of your highlights from that?
Well, I've always been very individually minded, and always been very conservative. My family was that way, and we just had, there's always threats against firearms. Seems like we just live under this threat, of being, having our rights taken away. And sometimes, there's been very vocal people that have been a little bit on the outside of that, when militias were the big deal, and there was a lot of people doing things, but this is the real truth of the whole thing with me growing up is my mom and dad. I mean, my family was very, is Baptist, and Revelation is, in times, was a big part. And so, growing up, and then too, my grandparents went through the Depression. So I knew that it was an actual thing. And so I've just always had a survival mindset for that reason. I mean, I guess it's developed way past that, but, it was definitely, I guess, part of the reason why I always felt like that being prepared was smart. And, whether it's into the apocalypse or it's, a natural disaster, I mean, all of these things are possible. And, my family, I've got, especially when you have kids, having a little bit of food put back and water and ways to filter water and ways to, a lot of people make it into a massive hobby of their life. They kind of put a focus point on it. And, I've been there, but that's one of the reasons why I started the channel Sensible Prepper, because, prepper really means someone that's just prepared, prepared to face whatever. And, so, there's been a lot of factors, I think, but it's funny. The way that channel started was, I did some survival videos all along the way, just a little bit on my Sootch channel. I called it Sensible Survival. But so many guys would come in and say, I thought this was a gun channel. Why has this got survival stuff? And so I just thought, well, I'll just start a prepping channel. And I'm glad I did, because, it's really grown into a thing of its own. But it's more or less, you look around, I mean, honestly, to not have any preparation, the guy that came by that got that BAR from Classic Firearms, he was in a major hurricane this past year. In fact, he worked at a Lowe's that was completely flattened to the ground. Wow. And they're not rebuilding it. So he lost his job on top of that. And he said this whole area, he said, we lost a lot of business, a lot of our businesses and a lot of our jobs down there. And he said, there was a lot of problems they had with looters. And, when you hear a lot of things like this that go on, I mean, I've been in, I think one of the questions, which I'm going to get ahead of it, maybe if I'm not careful, but, my personal experience is, mainly from what I've seen, and just being prepared. But, we've all gone through days without power and, wanting to make sure that we're prepared. We've had taste of it. But unless you've been in a real natural disaster, which is a hurricane or an earthquake, or, you really don't know, what you're going to do. So I'll tell you, it's like this. I told my son one time, he asked me, he said, Dad, why do we have food stored? Because we've gone to the Mormon cannery and we did that. In fact, we did it on video, the whole thing. And, we've got some food stocked up and ways to filter water and, different whatever necessities. And I told him, I said, he was young then. And I said, let me tell you something. I said, if there's ever a time where there's something that happens where we don't have food, and I said, and you don't have food, you're my son. I said, there is nothing that could stop me from walking up and down our road and taking whatever I want to take. I said, there's nothing. I said, but I said, that's not who I am. And I said, so I'm not going to do that. I can't do it. So to keep me from being tempted, we have stores of food. And he looked at me and he said, okay, that makes sense. I said, it's not a matter of, it's a matter of doing the right thing and preparing for your family. And, because I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go up and take from somebody else. In fact, I'll help people if they need it. I mean, that's just who I am.
Yeah. And that's a great position to have. I know that you kind of touched on some of your experiences. I've been through a couple of tornadoes, living in the Oz state of Kansas, but the last tornado that I went through was in 2009, summer of 2009, and it went directly over the apartment building that I was living in at the time as I was finishing up my degree at Kansas State University. And luckily enough, my apartment building was somewhat unscathed, knocked down a tree in our front yard that we had, and we were out of power for 3 or 4 days. And holy crap, I didn't know what to do. So since then, I've been kind of setting just a little bit just to get through a week. Around here, we don't have much of a problem. But any major natural disasters that you've been through at all?
It's funny because we have had tornadoes, but it was nothing that, really caused any kind of major disruption with our lifestyle. But, I guess the biggest thing we've done is having ice storms and having power outages. We've had power out for about 2 weeks extended. And, but really, we don't have earthquakes here. We don't live on the coast, so we don't have the hurricanes. But, there's really no area that's safe from any natural disaster. But I'll tell you a story. There was a place not too far from here a few years ago that had a train derail, and it was carrying chemicals. And so this whole town had to be evacuated. And the thing is, they came in and knocked on the door and said, you got to go now. And so the people just walked away. And it went on for, I think it was over a week or so that they had to stay away from their houses. Now there are definitely some places that pop up that give shelter and all that. And there were, but, in a major crisis, a national crisis or a really large local crisis, like Southeast or something, there's going to be very little aid to take care of everyone. I kind of feel like it's almost like welfare. Am I just depending on if a natural disaster comes, I'm going to go to the Red Cross and let them take care of me? Or am I going to, I may use the Red Cross as well, but I also want to have the things that I need. We have bags. Each of my kids have I call it a go bag, and they just have it in their car. They've got some food, water, space blankets, water filter system, just some basic survival. It's not a bug out bag, but it's definitely a survival bag. And they keep it with them in their car. It's in the trunk. It's just no thought. But if they ever find themselves in trouble, I know Atlanta, a few years ago, they had what they call the snow apocalypse. And the snow came in, it shut the whole city down. People were having to walk. They were sleeping in their cars on 85. They couldn't go anywhere. And so, they were completely unprepared. And having even stuff in your vehicle is just FEMA will tell you that you need to have something at your home, they'll tell you need to have something to be able to take in your car, because it's a real possibility. But what I find funny is over the years, a lot of people, especially in the gun community, were there were some that were definitely preppers or survival minded. I'll put it that way. And over the years, more and more people have become survival minded than in previous years. I think it's become more mainstream.
I think so too. And I think one of the major issues with that, it has to do with the concept with a lot of gun guys who have this like, and I don't want to make it sound like it's all crazy or anything, but kind of have this more libertarian, let me do for me and not have to worry about the government doing for me. And I think that maybe Hurricane Katrina down in Louisiana really opened up people's eyes on that aspect, possibly as well.
Right. No, definitely. And, really, what was America founded on? It was founded on rugged individualism and, working hard for yourself. I mean, for me, I don't take anything from the government except, they have highways for me to travel on, and we do have water, that comes. And, but I mean, when you really went for us, I mean, we try to stay as independent as we can from any kind of services that we need. Now, there are things that definitely are benefits, and I'm definitely feel like that there is a place for government, but I'm a libertarian as well, and I feel like it's very limited. And so if I'm going to speak that way and yet depend on them in a natural disaster to take care of me,
Yeah, exactly. So with that being said, and I know that you've got tons of videos on Sensible Prepper, and if there's some that you would like to point to in regards to this next question, by all means do so. But what would you say is some of the easy survival hacks for like food or water or EDC stuff that anyone can do, regardless of how experienced or how much budget they have or whatever the case may be? What are some of those easy ones that you like the best?
Well, one thing that I base all my survival ideas on is the rule of threes. And that's 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. So food is not necessarily the most important. You got to be able to breathe first. And so really having some kind of, dust mask or having some respirator or something like that, not necessarily gas mask, but that's also a possibility. But having some way to protect your breath, which is a bandana could be part of it. But the first is making sure you cover those bases. Now, medical and self-defense flow in between those. Water is a critical thing that you need to kind of have some kind of plan for. And that can be difficult. But like for us, we have a big Berkey. We've had it for 6 years, and we use it every day, because we got spoiled because the water was so good compared to the city water that we have coming in here. I cannot drink a glass of water from the tap because it tastes like chlorine, which it has chlorine in it.
So explain real quick what the big Berkey is, just for those that don't know.
It's a stainless steel tank, and it has these black charcoal filters. And so you fill up your reservoir, and it goes down into a smaller reservoir that you drink from. And it can take oil out of water. I mean, it can take the Coke out of Coke, just for water. I mean, it's really one of the best systems. It's just about close to $300, but the filters last for 6,000 gallons of water. So we've got this in here. We use it all the time. Well, let's say we're in a grid down situation. We go down to the creek, or we go over to our pool. You can put pool water in it.
Wow.
We take the pool water and we run it through the Berkey, and we've got clean drinking water, and up to 6,000 gallons. And so, it's that's just one thing to cover. Now, one thing that I do, though, that's a very popular part of the channel, is taking normal everyday items and using them for survival purposes. And I've done all kind of stuff from WD-40, to clothespins, to anything. I'll take it and I'll go through like 10, 20 uses to be able to utilize it. Even PVC, that's a real popular one that I took. PVC, ways to be able to survive. Because here's the thing, we go to a store and we buy items that are specific for a need. And if we're not careful, if we're really looking for something, we're kind of locked into this. Now, for us guys that are handymen that get out and do stuff and just do our own thing, yeah, it's a little bit easier for us. But for a lot of people, especially in urban areas, you know, they get kind of locked into this idea. So I even did one on condoms. In fact, it was pretty funny. But, you know, they'll hold water. There's a lot of different things. You can cover your feet in snow. It'll help insulate. I mean, there's just tons of things like this you don't really think about. We just did one with nail polish. It's actually on, I do something with, which is really a funny one because I just happened to hit me. But, and then I do a lot of research. So I make sure that I get, you know, have a good variety of ideas. But nail polish is one that'll surprise you. It's even a fire starter. So there's so many different things you can use. But, you know, that's one of the big ones is any kind of, you know, taking different items and using them. Bandanas. There's tons of, I think I have 25 uses for bandanas in a survival situation. So, you know, those are the big ones. But yeah, and two, that really could save you money because you're being redundant. You're not, you know, buying specific items for specific things. You know, shelters, being able to use tarps and really know how to use a tarp instead of a tent. You may not have a tent, you know, having space blankets. I mean, of course we could go on for a week. I got 500 videos over there, but you know, that's one of the big things I think that's been a help for a lot of people is just different uses. Plus it's it's kind of fun. It's kind of entertaining, but having a fire kit is really important. Some way to start fire, not just a Bic lighter. Bic lighters, and I've had them forever that, you know, I loved it. And then when I was out and I needed it, it wouldn't work. And so, you know, having some fire starting skills, just going out and building some fires.
Yep. I have one of the magnesium bricks that you can shave off and then you just spark it. Yeah. That's in my truck and it's with me everywhere I go. So
that's smart.
Yeah. And the reason for that is I cannot stand being cold. Now it's kind of silly because I deer hunt in Kansas and come late November, December, early January, it can get really, really, really cold here. And I just sit in a stand for no apparent reason, obviously. But that does remind me on multiple occasions when I get back to the truck, I'm like, oh, I got to warm up. Well, what happens if I'm so cold and need to warm up and my truck doesn't start? Well, maybe it'd probably be a good idea to start a fire. And how am I going to do that if I don't have the materials to do that? So that's one of the reasons why I started carrying one of those Blicks. So, yeah.
I'll give you one tip though that's kind of cool that, especially for, you know, on a budget, is if you want an excellent fire starter, take Vaseline, mix it up with cotton balls, and it is the best fire starter, period. I mean, I keep a little container of it, and it'll start. It just flames up. It's beautiful, and it's cheap, super cheap.
Yep, exactly. And you just put it, well, it's a little bit more difficult these days because you don't see the 35 millimeter little canisters, right? That are really starting to date me now. But it used to be you could get one of those little film canisters for a 35 millimeter camera, and you could stuff a whole bunch of those cotton balls in there and then just put the lid on it, and it's waterproof.
Right, right. But you can do it with a prescription bottle or, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Shaq jumping in there saying dryer lint. And yep, yeah, it's a good point. Good point. So
it's cheap.
Let's see. Alana, she jumped in here and said, I've been watching a lot of episodes of I Survived, so I feel pretty confident in my ability to survive for at least 14 days in a truck with 7 rice cakes and a gallon of water.
Well, good luck.
Good luck. Good luck. So, all right. Well, we've kind of gone past the hour. We've just had a great time talking, but I do have one last question. I've been asking it these last few live chats, and I'd like to get Sootch's take on it. Who would win in a fight, the Punisher or John Wick?
Well, this is maybe skill may have something to do. I may give skill a little bit to John Wick, but I think for the passion, the Punisher, man. I mean, his family was just wiped out in front of him. And you know, even though John Wick, you know, he definitely had losses, but and I had to think about that one because you did kind of give me a heads up on that one. But I think the passion that you would have, the anger, the Punisher.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at how much anger drives you.
Right. But now, as far as really skill, you know, John Wick, I don't know. I'd like for them to be a team. I'd like for both of them to be on my team.
Yes, exactly. Right on, right on. So, well, I'm just typing back one thing here, and all right, there you go. So, Sootch, thank you so much for joining us. I can tell you that I've seen a couple of different comments here in the chat room, and there's been a number of people who have said that they really do appreciate you jumping on board here and to kind of get an idea of kind of the man behind the YouTube channel and understanding, you know, like you said earlier, you're just another guy, you know?
Yeah.
So
we all are.
yes, we really are. Really are. Yeah. So there's nothing stopping each and every single one of these people in the chat room from having their own YouTube channel and being successful. I can tell you that way before I even thought of doing a YouTube channel, when I kind of really got involved in the gun scene for the YouTube, you know, the gun community, I guess. It would have been probably about 2013, 2012. You were one of the channels that I just gravitated to because the wealth of knowledge that you put in all of these videos. There's usually not anybody walking away from one of your videos still questioning, well, what's the specs on that again? So so anyway, as mentioned, obviously we've got Sootch's channel. He's also got a second channel called Sensible Prepper. I need to add those links into the description, but I will do that so you guys, if you're watching on replay or whatever the case may be, you can find his links down in the description below. Sootch, I'm going to give you the last word before we get out of here. Anything else that you want to throw out to the audience?
Well, you know, just take self-defense as your responsibility and take someone to the range. That is the most important. And be strong and be of good courage.
There you go. I was waiting for it.
The Republic.
Long live the Republic. So I see that Midas jumping in there late. Thanks for joining us. I sure do appreciate it. Thank you to everybody that joined in the chat. Some great questions, and I'm sorry I couldn't get to everybody's questions, but thank you so much for engaging. You guys have been great conversations back and forth between y'all. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close everything up for tonight. Again, thank you, Sootch, for jumping on board and giving us the time. Hopefully we will be able to run into each other at NRAM if everything goes well. That'll be exciting. Maybe, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they are or not, but Brownells usually does a cigar get together or something.
Yes, I will be there if they do.
Oh, yeah. So with that being said, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. Again, I do apologize for the lack of content here recently. I am focusing pretty much 90% of my time right now on training for this fight coming up on March 30th. I will have a video on that as soon as I get the raw video from the fight, so you guys will actually be able to see it if you can't join in person. If you have any questions on anything about the fight, if you're looking to maybe even travel to support me, that would be awesome. Feel free to email me or DM me on Instagram. I can give you all the specifics with that. So thanks again. Have a great night. Don't forget, it's Taco Tuesday. Make sure you eat your tacos. And with that, keep calm and carry. Bye, guys. See you later.